With the shocking news of Brendan Rodgers' resignation at Celtic, rumours about his replacement, and a few Premier League transfer rumours swirling around, we of course had to get our very own chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, in to get the latest on all these topics. So, Crookie, thank you for joining me. First up, we need to talk about the Celtic situation. So we know that Brendan Rodgers' resignation was a shock. We know that our own Martin O'Neill will be in charge as interim manager, but how did they get here? Do we know why Brendan departed so suddenly? What's the club's reaction been?
Well, I think their immediate reaction was one of shock and maybe panic, actually. It sounded pretty chaotic on Monday afternoon when Brendan Rodgers decided he was standing down. Then they made that call to our own Martin O'Neill at the ripe old age of 73 to go back in on an interim basis. It's not a massive shock that Brendan Rodgers is leaving. I think it's the timing of his departure. I reported a couple of weeks ago now, when I was covering Rangers' search for a new manager, that Brendan Rodgers was unlikely to sign a new contract when his old deal expired in the summer. I think Celtic had already begun succession planning, even though Dermot Desmond, of course, has said publicly they wanted Brendan to sign a new deal. The trouble they've got now is the calibre of manager they want, the list of names on their hit list, if you like. A lot of them are in work. Take Craig Bellamy, for example, former Celtic player, obviously embroiled at the moment in a World Cup campaign with Wales. I would imagine he would be reluctant to walk out on that now and give up the prospect of leading his country in the US next summer to go to Celtic. Could be a similar situation with Kieran McKenna, who I think at this stage is the front runner, but he's on really good money at Ipswich, having signed a new contract when there was interest in him from Brighton and to a lesser extent Manchester United. There's also a hefty compensation payment, and we know that the Celtic board don't particularly like to spend money. That's one of Brendan Rodgers' complaints that's led us to this situation in the first place. They've looked at other managers in work in Europe, but again, persuading them to leave mid-season I think would be difficult. The one manager I think would jump at it is Robbie Keane, currently in charge of Ferencváros, won the Hungarian title with them last season. He's also won the league title as a manager in Israel, and he was a former Celtic loanee. But I think at the moment it is really open to debate exactly how long this interim stint for Martin O'Neill will continue, certainly beyond the weekend, I would have thought, when they play Rangers in a League Cup semi-final. And who knows, if he wins that game, Martin O'Neill, there might just be a clamour to appoint him on a full-time basis.
Who knows? He could be back in charge. He could be back in a job managing. You mentioned Craig Bellamy. I was at the England versus Wales press conference, and he seemed really happy to be Wales coach. He seemed very proud to be representing his country in that way and really wanted to do a good job. So I agree. I'm not too sure. I'd be surprised by that personally, just from the vibe that you got from that press conference alone. A lot of people will be asking about Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, he's recently out of a very short stint at Nottingham Forest. What do you reckon about this one?
Yeah, I reached out to people close to Ange actually on Tuesday morning when this news broke, obviously the previous evening, and the message I got was unlikely at this stage that Ange Postecoglou will consider a return to Celtic Park. That's not to say it won't happen in the future, but you've just mentioned there a really unhappy 8-game spell at Nottingham Forest.
Not the best advert, is it?
No, and I think maybe he would want to take stock now and work out his next move and make sure it's absolutely right for him, because what he can't afford is another appointment that goes so wrong so quickly. With Ange Postecoglou, it wouldn't surprise me actually if his next job is in international management, maybe even in charge of the Greek national team, because they've not had the best World Cup qualifying campaign. So yeah, at the moment, unlikely. I think Celtic fans will welcome him back with open arms, and he's certainly someone that Dermot Desmond and the hierarchy would want to talk to. But as I say, that's being played down to me. It could change. You never say never.
Now, regarding Brendan Rodgers, are there any jobs that you could actually see him taking on in the future?
Well, I think our own Alan Brazil has said this morning on talkSPORT that a move to Saudi Arabia is a possibility, and I can see why that would be attractive to someone like Brendan Rodgers. There are millions of reasons why he would fancy a move to Saudi. Obviously, Steven Gerrard would be able to advise him as to whether that is a good idea or not. Then you look at a bit closer to home. I think if he'd left 2 weeks ago, he would have been a serious contender to replace Postecoglou at Forest. I mentioned before that Evangelos Marinakis is an admirer of his work, but obviously Sean Dyche is in situ there now. Elsewhere in the Premier League, you've got two or three pretty high-profile jobs where managers are coming to the end of their contracts. Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace, Marco Silva at Fulham, and Andoni Iraola at Bournemouth as well. And I'm sure that Brendan Rodgers would be high on a lot of those lists because you look at his record, nearly led Liverpool to the title, won the FA Cup with Leicester, obviously won multiple trophies at Celtic. So in terms of his managerial pedigree, I think his CV is right up there. I guess what club owners will look at is the fact that he's walked out on Celtic not once but twice now, albeit in different circumstances, and that may well put them off. And then you look into the EFL, Birmingham probably not as high in the table as they would have wanted to be. So I think Chris Davies' position there is one to keep an eye on. And the same with Phil Parkinson at Wrexham. Obviously, they've just been beaten in a Wales derby against Cardiff, a team in the league below. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Phil Parkinson. Whether Brendan Rodgers will want to drop into the Championship, I think he's probably open to debate.
Now, whilst I've got you, you are the man in the know when it comes to transfers as well. So I just wanted to touch on one or two things that have been in the news today. Lucas Paquetá, he reportedly wants to leave West Ham in January. I just wanted to ask you how likely you think that is and who would be in for him, because I know Manchester City, they were linked a couple of years ago, but his form at the moment, I don't know if he would realistically break into their team. So, yeah, what's the latest on this?
Yeah, I mean, he was very close to joining Manchester City. It was pretty much agreed in terms of personal terms, and they were going to pay a hefty transfer fee. And then he was accused of these betting allegations, of which he's been subsequently cleared. And I think that's quite important when we talk about Lucas Paquetá. I think he feels that he owes West Ham a debt of gratitude for standing by him in difficult times. So the information I've got is that he's not pushing to leave as early as January. Certainly his camp nor the player himself have articulated that desire to the hierarchy there. I think the West Ham owners know that come the summer, it probably will be a different story. And he was attracted to a move to Aston Villa in the last summer transfer window. But they're determined to keep hold of him at least until the end of the season, because obviously West Ham are deep now in a relegation trouble. They've lost a couple of players due to injury in recent days. Mavropanos is going to be out for 6 weeks. He's got an hamstring issue. Ollie Scarles has been one of the players who've been put into the team by Nuno Espirito Santo. He needs shoulder surgery, so they're pretty light on numbers anyway. And if you look at players who are going to keep them in the Premier League, obviously Jarrod Bowen is the main man. I would suggest that Lucas Paquetá, in terms of that star quality, the ability to win games, is next in line. So I don't envisage a scenario where West Ham weaken themselves by selling him in January if, as I suspect, they're still right in the thick of a relegation battle.
Yeah, exactly. It's not been good from them, has it? So I'm sure fans will be happy to hear that he's not rushing to the exit door just yet. Now, another team, our team, Manchester United. I know that we were on Inside Devils talking about it yesterday, but, you know, they were in brilliant form for the most part on Saturday in that 4-2 win over Brighton. We've spoken about it a little bit, but obviously two of the key players, Bryan Mbeumo and Amad Diallo, who are working really well on that right-hand side, we will be missing them when they head off to AFCON after Christmas. Mazraoui, we suspect, will also be missing too. So have you heard anything about any plans to bring reinforcements in January in those areas? Obviously, the midfield is a massive conversation as well. The futures of Joshua Zirkzee, Kobbie Mainoo. Is there anything you can tell us?
Yeah, I think the midfield is a priority, and I keep an eye on Conor Gallagher and his situation at Atletico Madrid. I know that he's a player that United inquired for in the summer window. Atletico and Diego Simeone didn't want him to go at that moment in time, but he isn't playing week in, week out. So I think he is a contender. Obviously, longer term, the likes of Carlos Baliba, Adam Wharton, Elliot Anderson, Newcastle, if he continues to develop as he is, would be targets. But they're difficult deals to do in January, maybe even difficult deals to do in the summer transfer window in terms of Anderson and Adam Wharton. You're right to bring up the African Cup of Nations. It's going to be a big blow for United to lose two of their most important players. And I think it will have a knock-on effect for the likes of Joshua Zirkzee and Kobbie Mainoo, because obviously both of those players are looking to leave. Kobbie to try and get his England place back in a World Cup year, and Zirkzee, I think, just growing frustrated at a lack of playing time at Old Trafford. But the squad is light, so I think unless they do get reinforcements in, and I've got to say I'm not hearing too many names in those areas, then I think they're going to make it quite difficult, certainly for Mainoo and maybe Zirkzee for a lesser extent to go. There is interest in Zirkzee. We talked about West Ham. They're one of the clubs who are sniffing around, and certainly teams back in Italy as well. But I think Ruben Amorim is quite keen to try and keep the bulk of this squad together, at least until the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a really hard one with Kobbie Mainoo because it's sad that it's not working. From an England perspective, I want him to be doing well. From a Man United perspective as well, but it's been such a fall off for him, and I really hope that this manages to rectify itself, but I'm not even sure how it would. And finally, I just wanted to ask you about Liverpool. It's not been the most amazing start to the season for them. From your sources, are there any concerns about the start that they've had to the season, or the business that they've done, and the worries about signing settling in perhaps, or is it all pretty cool, calm and collected at Liverpool?
I don't think there's panic in the air. Arne Slot certainly has credit in the bank for what he achieved last season, but this is only the fourth time in Premier League history that Liverpool have lost 4 games in a row in a single season. So that is alarming. I did a bit of a deep dive into this yesterday, and for me, the big issue is in the fullback areas. They haven't replaced Trent Alexander-Arnold. They knew that was going to be difficult to do in terms of a like-for-like replacement. I think that's why Florian Wirtz came in to give that bit of creativity in midfield. But obviously, he is still finding his feet in the Premier League at this moment in time. Jeremy Frimpong, who's injured anyway, is a very different type of fullback to Trent. Trent obviously liked to sit deep and almost play a sort of quarterback role and play passes over the top for the likes of Mo Salah. Frimpong likes to hug the touchline a bit more, and I think that's had a definite impact on Salah's form, or lack of, at the start of this season as well. And then you look at the other side of the back four, Milos Kerkez, who I saw a lot of Bournemouth and thought what a fine player he was, hasn't been able to replicate that form at Liverpool. And I do think there's an argument now that maybe Arne Slot needs to go back to what he knows and put Andy Robertson back in that back four just to give them a more stable feel, and maybe that would help Virgil van Dijk and Konaté, who've not been at their best either. In terms of Liverpool going forward, they will score goals. Those players are going to click. Wirtz is a very talented playmaker. Isak, when he's fit and up to speed, will get goals, and I expect Salah to get back to his best. But for me, it's the defence they need to sort out, and I wonder if they might sign another centre-back in January. Obviously, they tried for Mark Gay, didn't get him. They brought in a teenager from Parma who's now injured, so I think that has really weakened them in terms of options. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went out and got a centre-back in this upcoming window, be it Mark Gay or maybe another player that we haven't heard about as yet.
Well, there you have it, Liverpool fans. Could you get a new signing? Do you need a new signing? Let us know in the comments. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, this video is in association with our own bookie, talkSPORT Bet. Download the app or head to talksportbet.com if you want to get involved. 18 plus, T's and C's apply. BeGambleAware.org.